What's up, everyone? Welcome to a special edition of Retro Encounter. This is episode number 25. Yay!
Yay! We're
Thank you.
over a century old.
I'm your host, Josh Curry. With me is Caitlin Argyros,
Hi, guys.
Davi Tesnovich,
Hey, buddy.
Marcos Gaspar,
Hey, everyone.
Mike Sollosi,
Hello, everyone.
and Peter Triezenberg.
Why is there a chicken with goggles in the Skype chat? Also,
Because-
hi.
Because Marcos has an extremely diverse image folder that I am baffled as to what its other content.
I was just gonna say I thought he was an animal or something.
I think it's just random.
So, for those of you new to the podcast, I am sorry. This is going to be a very atypical podcast. You should listen to something else. Normally talk about games.
Don't
This
listen
time,
to
No.
Listen to something else.
this time,
Listen to another episode of Retro Encounter. Is what
That's
he
what I
meant to
said.
say. Or one of the other fine podcasts at RPG Fan.
Yeah,
I
they
thought
actually
there was
talk
only
about
one.
RPGs.
This.
That's the ring you're thinking about. There's only one ring. There are multiple podcasts.
no, we're the only one.
I thought there were like 7 rings.
Well,
There's
originally,
one
right?
ring to rule them all, though.
And in the
Yeah.
darkness, bind them.
So there's
Miyamoto
8 rings?
Musashi wrote a book about 5 rings.
Oh, there you go.
And so, as I was saying, normally talk about one game over the course of the month and actually play along. You guys have a chance to play along with us. We thought, because this is number 25 and also it's the holidays, we would do a year wrap-up of both the podcast and also kind of video games as a whole. So, it's a little different this time, but bear with us. It should be a good time. So we'll just roll right into the first topic instead of continuing to get sidetracked. First topic of today is what was our favorite game covered by Retro in 2015.
Right.
If I had been prepared, I would have put out a list of games. Give me 1 second. All right.
Do you want to count down through them? Do you know them off the top of your head?
I do know them off the top of my head.
So
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
give it
Well, then
to
go
us.
for
Go
it.
ahead.
So we started in May, and the first game was Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky. From that, we went to Final Fantasy X. Went to another great Final Fantasy game in Final Fantasy Tactics. Changed it up with the last story. Went into Terranigma, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And then the last 2 games were Deus Ex Human Revolution, and in December we played Parasite Eve.
Cool.
So lots of really, really good games. With the exception of myself, not everybody was on all of those. So I know some of you guys kind of skipped some of them, but also doesn't mean that you hadn't played them in the past. So what was everybody's favorite game that we covered this year?
Who goes first so we don't
You,
all
'cause you're already talking.
Oh, all right. Okay.
You
Well,
win. Congratulations.
Okay, well, I mean, like you alluded to, there's sort of 2 questions hidden in here because I was on, I think, 3 episodes of those 8, and but none of those would even be in my top 3 favorite games in the list because I wasn't on the Final Fantasy Tactics or Castlevania Symphony of the Night podcast, but those are 2 of my absolute favorite games of all time. I didn't volunteer for them because I didn't think it would be very interesting just listening to me praise those over and over and talk about how I've been playing them for a decade. So I deliberately tried to be on podcasts for games I either hadn't played before or wanted another perspective on. And probably surprisingly, my favorite Retro Encounter game that I played in 2015 was probably Final Fantasy X. Because I played FF10 years ago, probably 10, 11 years ago, and I sort of didn't like it at the time. I was, this old school hater that loves FF6 and 7, and 10 was weird and linear, and everyone wears terrible clothes. But when I replayed it, and I was sort of expecting to be on it this year, sort of as a negative voice, but I ended up really enjoying the game for reasons that I maybe didn't focus on very much when I played it a long time ago. So it was really refreshing now, enjoying FF10 much more in 2015 than I did in 2004 or whenever I played it. So yeah, that was a long rambling explanation, but yeah, FF10.
What about you, Caitlin?
it's a hard decision for me. I think in terms of like the games themselves, gotta go with Tactics. Just like that's one of my favorite RPGs of all time. But in
Me
terms
too.
of like the experience playing it for the show, I really enjoyed Deus Ex. It was really fun to talk about all the different ways that we approach that game and to discuss the intricacies of the story. And for me, especially playing the director's cut and getting to have all that commentary while I was playing, learning all these little background stories about how the game was made and decisions that they had to make along the way was a really fun way to experience the game a second time and for the podcast. So Deus Ex. I did choose this. Quite literally.
Good, we got that joke in every time we've talked about the game now.
It's like requirements. You cannot talk about Deus Ex without making that joke now.
I really liked those episodes too. Those were really nice. Thank you for those, guys.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening.
Davey, you're the reason we do it.
I always listen.
We had one person listening. Yay.
Yep. Davey got it.
It was him all along.
That's one more than we had before.
It was me all along, Austin.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, no, I mean more than just David listened, because there was even some Deus Ex scuttlebutt going on in the Retro Encounter topic on the forums. So and we encourage all of our listeners to talk about it on the forums every episode, please. We love talking about ourselves, talking about games.
I like just talking about myself. So if we want to make that a topic, that's fine.
We'll just make the Josh Curry thread.
Yeah.
On the boards, and we can just everyone talk about Josh Curry. Post your opinions of Josh Curry.
Talk about how terrible he is.
Make memes of Josh Curry.
So, Davey, since you listened to all the episodes, I kind of want to hear what your favorite one was to actually listen.
Okay. Well, it's gonna be up between either Deus Ex or The Last Story in that regard. For totally different reasons. What was it? I was on it, yeah.
You can't pick one that you were on.
But it was really fun, and I came really, really close to writing a horrible fanfic for this episode of Retro Encounter.
What?
What?
So, yeah,
No.
like
How does that work?
Okay, Davey, who are you shipping me with? Because this is an important question.
No, it was Therius, and was his name Zane? Am I making that up?
Zale.
Zale. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was gonna be Therius and Zale, and it was gonna be about their
mixing up
polygons bumping in the night.
I'd read it.
Were you mixing up your The Last Story fanfic with your One Direction fanfics?
Terrified that you know that.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Okay, all right. Or your Legend of Heroes fanfics. How's that?
There you go. Yeah.
We'll just all pretend we didn't see that.
Sure. Or hear it.
So, Davey, was The Last Story also your favorite game this year that you played?
For Retro Encounter games.
Yeah, for Retro Encounter.
The one that I played for Retro Encounter, it was Symphony of the Night. For sure.
Yeah, boy.
As much as angry as that game makes me by comparison to other ones in the series, it's still better than games that aren't it. And it was really fun. Although I think my favorite game that we've covered just in general would probably be FF10, because that game still makes me freaking lose it like a little girl every time. I buy right into that love story pretty hard. I wouldn't wanted to be on that because I would get weird and emotional.
At least somebody would have cared about the ending then.
Man, yeah.
I like the ending.
Yeah.
What?
I was the only person on the podcast that actually finished the game.
You're never gonna let us live that down.
Nope. Or no, well, I'm never gonna let you live it down. But everyone else I forgive.
Wait, who doesn't like the ending in 10?
FF10 is a beautiful ending.
I was kidding. The only problem I have with 10's ending is that they erase it with 10-2.
Yeah, 10-2 is just kind of like fanfic to me. Like, it's non-canon.
Yeah.
Yet somehow I don't think we're going to be playing FF10-2 on Retro Encounter in the near future.
Oh, you never know.
It's
near future.
Well, we've almost played all the RPGs, right? So.
Yeah, we're almost done with RPGs.
It only took 8, so.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
There's only There's only about 20 RPGs, so we have basically another year and we're done.
Yeah. Then we can retire.
8 Dragon Quest games and let's say 13 Final Fantasies.
It depends on what you define as an RPG.
Oh
yeah.
no.
Like if we include Zelda games, because those are real games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Dark Knight.
Yes.
My favorite Zelda game is driving to 7-Eleven and drinking a Slurpee.
No, we're not doing that. Did you look for money in a bush before you went?
This is too many.
How do you think I paid for the Slurpee?
Did you remember to knock over the garbage can for turkey?
Wait, that's a thing?
in like Final Fight and Ninja Turtles, I guess. But
yeah, seriously, where have you been?
But
all right,
seriously,
maybe we should keep on staying on topic.
say what you will about 10-2 though. It's better than the After Years.
What?
Ooh.
Final Fantasy 4.
For 4?
I just don't like.
I have a lot of problems with the After Years. I think that it has cool story ideas with like basically Kane's journey in that game, but it's just not a good game. It like mechanically it feels so weak.
Can we just say that if there's a direct sequel to anything, it's just never as good? Like, so like you take something, we'll use Final Fantasy 4 10, and you have a concrete story that has a full story arc. There's a reason that there was a completion of a story arc that gives you resolution and closure. Staple something else on, I feel like it doesn't work. Like if you look at Uncharted, they're independent stories of one another, so they work fine independently.
What about Mass Effect?
What about Xenosaga?
I'd argue Mass Effect is one big story.
Yeah, that was going to be my counter. Is what if they're planned out to be more than one?
Yeah.
You have to set up some distinction there, because my first thought was like, well, Empire Strikes Back is better than New Hope by a long shot, even though they're both fantastic movies. But yeah, I guess that you have to distinguish between things that are set in the same universe and telling an overarching story, and something that was just like, we decided to make this because the first thing was popular, and now we're tacking on this extra crap.
Yeah, I don't think that
Chrono Cross says hi.
What?
Okay, but
you're saying a direct sequel.
But
Chrono Cross is the exception to the rule, I think, because it's still really interesting.
And also, Chrono Cross is 5 years after Chrono Trigger, and while FF4 The After Years is like 20 years after FF4, in the real world when the sequels were made. I think this is a weird question to address, a weird topic to address, because it goes into the thing whether games need sequels, whether the creators want to make sequels. It's a huge amount of guesswork that I think is totally different case to case. So I don't think I could give that question a fair answer.
I don't think the argument is that sequels are bad, because I think he's kind of saying that mechanics and stuff can evolve, but when you use the same setting and you try to prolong the same story when it wasn't intended to from the beginning, then it comes off as superficial. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I agree with that.
Maybe, because I mean...
I was thinking games like Dark Cloud 2 was like way better than the first one, but that evolved mechanically. Like it didn't try to staple something out of the story or the setting, you know.
We're off topic. Yeah. Marcos, what was your favorite game from Retro Encounters here?
For me, it'd probably have to be... I'm divided on this one, but I'm gonna throw a coin, and let's see, and Last Story, there it is.
Okay.
Wow. Last Story, beautiful game. I always like it when we decide to go with a different localization team, and I love British actors, and it's just a great thing. I love the accents. I'm envious of you, and I really love the acting in this game, and the cast of characters were great too, and the music, beautiful.
Right. The music in Last Story was really good. We only have a couple more days left before we hit 2016. I still haven't beaten the Last Story. I'm still stuck at the final boss.
Ooh, so there is games that you don't beat when everybody else beats it.
Get out.
Yeah, no. I'm totally being a hypocrite. I'm just gonna. It's really only FF10.
I beat that game without blocking. Because I didn't know where the button was.
Because you don't really need to block.
Well, I think I'm under leveled. I was like level 58 or something at the final boss. So I think if I grind a little bit, I.
How do you under level in Last Story?
I never did. I avoided a lot of combat. I never did any of those circle things that let you grind.
Okay.
I'd circle grind all the time.
Right.
Yeah. So
get out.
So, right, Peter, what was your favorite?
This is supposed to be a wholesome podcast.
It was wholesome. I did not swear.
Retro Encounter is over, guys. I'm sorry, but
this is an entirely different podcast.
We fired Josh Curry.
Risque Encounter.
Oh no!
Is that with the prostitute RPG?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can bring back the prostitute RPG.
No, guys,
the yaoi couplings.
1 second, guys. Oh god, I wanted to save this for later in the podcast, but do you know? Are you guys aware of the Assassin's Creed Syndicate DLC that dropped earlier this month?
Of course not.
I don't know.
What, Jack the Ripper or?
Yeah, they add prostitutes to the game, and you can rescue them.
Awesome.
From Jack the Ripper.
Game of the year.
We'll
stamp it now.
Right? I haven't even played it, and it's like, well, Game of the Year. I mean, every other game on the list is worthless now. Rescuing prostitutes game, RPG.
They stole our Kickstarter idea.
Oh, man.
Bastards.
Right?
They owe us a paycheck.
Because that game came out on December 15th, and our last podcast on Deus Ex was like December 1st or something. So
we forgot to write it in an envelope and mail it to ourselves, though.
Yeah, they whipped it up in 2 weeks. Just
it's the worst.
Just by listening to us.
So sorry, Peter. What were you saying?
Well, I wasn't saying anything because.
What were you trying to say? Before Mike rudely interrupted you.
It's as seems to be the recurring running thread here, I'm also torn on what my favorite game for the podcast was, because I think of the 5, I was on 5 of the games that we played. 2 of them I did not like. 3 of them are some of my favorite games, or 2 of them were my favorite games ever, and 1 of them was a game I hadn't played before. And I think between Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Parasite Eve, I think I liked each of those games and the recordings for different reasons. With Final Fantasy X, I kind of felt like we were still getting our feet wet, but it started coming together, and I really loved that game. So I think it made for good discussions. Tactics was just I was glad to get that game off my bucket list. It was really interesting playing it along with a bunch of people who knew the game far better than me, and were able to provide some helpful feedback. And Parasite Eve is just another game that I liked talking about that game with everybody. It's one of my favorite PS1 classics. I also really liked how the Symphony of the Night podcast turned out, even if we had like scheduling issues up the wazoo with that one.
Yeah, and that was you trying out a whole new genre of game too, which was interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been a wild, long, and crazy ride, but I feel like every episode I'm on, I learned something new. So I think that's there's something to be said for that.
So for me, it was kind of, if you had like asked me this question, just like gave me the list of games before we started the podcast, I think my answers would be completely different than what they are today. Going into planning, I assumed that I was going to absolutely adore the last story, and then with like the shooting mechanics of Deus Ex, I felt like it was just like a really easy, like this is going to be a solid game that I really like. And I like Deus Ex. I progressively disliked the last story the more I played it, but I feel like the last story would have been the one that I for sure would have picked. Like, this is the one I'm going to guarantee to love. Same thing with Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Like, I've desperately wanted to play that game for years.
I didn't realize you hadn't played that before.
I've played every Castlevania game but that one, basically. And so it was one of those things that was like, I need to go back to like the roots and like understand where this whole series came from. But because I was going back and I played all the other ones, it was less impactful than I would have assumed. And then there's just issues with Lost Story that I kind of eventually made me not like it. But the obvious pick is Tactics. Like, that is one of my top 5 games of all time. Like, I adore that game. And even though there was like stumbles through it, that's still the best game to me that we have played. But beyond that, the best game that I hadn't played going into this, it has to be Parasite Eve. We finished the year on a really, really strong note. It was again like Symphony of the Night. It was a game that I'd always wanted to play. I just happened to miss. And so I was really happy to get a chance to play through it.
Parasite Eve is a really just cool, stylish game, and it was really fun listening to people discover it for the first time and longtime fans just, extol its virtues for a while. It's Parasite Eve is great. That's not a surprise to anyone.
It's really unique, and I think it's even unique looking at it in a 2015 lens, which is nice.
I had a weird phenomenon with you in Final Fantasy Tactics, Josh Curry. Ever since I listened to those episodes, I have an association with you and Delita. Like, that's how I imagine you in my mind.
Is that a compliment?
Yeah, what's going on?
I don't know. Delita's kind of a despicable person, but
he betrays everyone except for his best friend.
No, he betrays even his best friend.
Well, sort of. I don't know. I think Delita is one of the most complicated, interesting characters in Final Fantasy history, which obviously means Josh is nothing like Delita at all.
Oh, thanks.
He is mature and resolute.
He uses people, darn it.
Yeah, but he has, in his mind, it's fully justified for the greater good.
Well, yeah. I mean, he betrays both sides in the War of the Lions to eventually seize power at the end. But he sort of uses Ramza by setting him up to stop the Shrine Knights so they don't end up seizing power. But the fact is, Delita is counting on Ramza to complete his own quest, and then take all the credit at the end. In a way, you could say he's betraying Ramza because of how the story ends with Ramza falling into obscurity and Delita becoming king. But throughout the game, Delita is wants Ramza to win and has his back. So I view it as
for his
Delita
own selfish reasons.
Yeah, well, sure.
In the day, all of us are selfish, though.
And and also what happened to what's her name's Tata in the in the PS1 version, but Delita's sister
Tetra.
when she
Tetra?
yeah, it's Tetra in the PSP version. I mix up the two translations a lot. But yeah, like when Tetra dies, he basically is just ready to stick it to all of the noble class, but Rams is like the one noble that he actually likes and trusts. I feel. I guess we're interpreting him differently.
I interpret his manipulation of Ramza as a betrayal, but that's just me.
I interpret him supporting Ramza in overthrowing the Shrine Knights as support and not betrayal.
I'm gonna interpret it as me being a good guy.
I like you.
Delita is, well, at the very least, Delita is an anti-hero, so...
Sure, yeah.
Which is the most interesting type of hero, so I'm okay with this.
Yeah, what a good game.
Yes.
That game is fantastic.
It's really good.
It was so good.
Like there's some mechanical stuff in Tactics I thought that really how much grinding was required that kind of turned me off. But oh man, that story and that world, that needs a proper follow up.
There's no grinding required in that game.
But it's so good to grind.
What?
Well,
No, there totally is.
No, yeah, I've beaten that game with literally no random encounters.
But if you're gonna build up a powerful class at the beginning,
propositions.
That's probably challenging because just walking across the entire map for story reasons means it's hard to avoid random encounters.
I think he's saying that he wasn't looking for them.
Sure, yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, but the early it's because the game I think was so much more difficult at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I guess to revise my statement, it feels like there's more grinding required than there really is. But I think I kind of got. Yeah, definitely. I think I kind of got into this habit where, because at the beginning I was getting my butt kicked so often that I kind of would start to over prepare a little bit.
And it's worthwhile just so you can have those dark nights.
You're well rewarded for the investment.
I got 2 or 3 over the course of the month.
Oh God, I still could not get Ramza into Dark Knight before the end of the game.
I envy you, Curry.
I tried.
The way to go is to make Ramza in his base Squire class and then give him samurai abilities.
That was good.
Yeah, draw out Niaido is my favorite skill set in the game.
I just did the double punching monk that Steven was always talking about.
Right.
I was always into ninja Ramza with 2 night swords.
Oh yeah.
There's so much fun ways to build up characters in that game.
Yeah.
That's why I said they need to make another one, and it needs to be set in Evil East proper this time. And I don't know. I want more.
The way Square Enix is going, I would not be surprised if they eventually did that, in the next 10 years.
Yeah. This kind of rolls. I was gonna say this kind of rolls into the next topic, but a game that I really want to do for next year, based off of how good War of the Lions was, I'd love to do.
Oh, wait! Can I guess?
Sure.
Is it Tactics Ogre? Let Us Cling Together.
What? How'd you know?
I want to do that one too.
Because first of all, that game is very good, and it's the original SNES version is by the Quest team that was eventually, hired by Square to make Final Fantasy Tactics. So it is the PSP version of that is very good, and it's probably the best facsimile of Final Fantasy Tactics that you'll find anywhere. So if I don't think it's on our list in the next few months, but if we do that for a future retro encounter, I'd be very interested in that too, because I've only played the very beginning of that game.
Yeah, I have that game, so I would be down as well.
Woo.
Me too. Because
So
I want to play it. I need an excuse to play it.
So like I said, that kind of leads us into topic number 2, which I'm shocked we made it through topic number 1 already. What would be our personal game that we'd want to see most on Retro Encounter? That first of all, we think will happen, and then also that we feel like there's no chance that we'll ever cover. Let's just go in the same order. That worked.
So, all right.
You don't even remember the order we went in.
No.
There is no order.
I went first, and then the last 2 were Josh and Peter. I think it was me, Caitlin, Davy, Marcos, Peter, Josh.
Yep, exactly.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
It went counterclockwise.
What?
All right,
It
We're
went
not sitting next to each other. That makes no sense.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're totally sitting next to each other. What are you talking about?
I am seeing a completely different state than you. That does not make any sense.
No, you're sitting next to Marcos.
Yeah, I mean the 6 of us are spread across 5 states.
How it looks on my Skype monitor, it was clockwise.
Carry on, Mike.
Jeez.
All right,
we're not arguing about this anymore.
All right, clockwise starting from Washington D.C., then going into Missouri. Now, the one game I know that we're not gonna do for a proper Retro Encounter episode is a Persona 3 or a Persona 4, because those games are like minimum 70 hours, and that is not a reasonable expectation for someone to play that in a month. And I adore Persona 3 and 4, especially 4, and I think we will probably end up talking about them in some fashion on the podcast, but there's no way we could do them for a regular Retro Encounter episode.
Yeah,
which is kind of a bummer, but
it'd be fantastic, but we'd have to do like a 2 or 3 month thing.
Yeah, it would be like 3 months and 6 episodes, and I'd be totally down for that. But it's not that's not a reasonable thing.
I could do a weekly podcast about Persona 4.
Oh, should we?
Persona, so good.
Persona Encounter.
Oh, we just start at first Persona and we just roll through it every week.
Nope, Persona 1 is a tire fire. Don't
Fine,
play it.
We'll start at Persona 3 because that's really when the series starts.
You can start at Persona 2, man.
Persona 2 is good. It's weird and old, but it's good.
Tire fire.
All right, okay, yeah.
It goes on a list of quotes from you, like damn pile of leaves.
Official RPG fan. Persona 1 is a tire fire.
Yeah, okay. Playing Persona 1 makes me feel like a damp pile of leaves.
Oh, that's the worst feeling.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, yeah.
I know that feel.
For listeners that don't get that inside joke, I'm sorry. But anyway, but the game I'd most like to play on Retro Encounter in 2016 is, let me think about this a little. Now, I mentioned before, I really prefer to play games for the podcast that I haven't played before, so it's a new experience for me, and I'm maybe talking about the game with people that are all of different opinions and experiences with it. So I'm gonna go with one of my white whales, a game that I've always meant to play, but it's never really happened for me. Phantasy Star 4 is a Genesis RPG that a lot of people say is the best or one of the best Genesis RPGs. But I've never played a Phantasy Star game. My Genesis experience is super limited because I was a Nintendo kid for that whole era when it actually mattered to be on a side, quote unquote. And I actually own it because I bought it on the Wii Virtual Console for $7 or $8, and I would love to have an excuse to play it. So yeah, Phantasy Star 4 is my answer.
I've gotten so many people recommending that lately. I feel like every conversation I've had in the last couple of weeks, somebody has mentioned that game and said I have to play it.
Yeah, there's one indie developer I really like, Robert Boyd of Z Boyd Games, who mentions Phantasy Star 4 as an inspiration all the time. So that only made me more curious about it when I first saw him, singing that game's praises on Twitter. So yeah, that's my answer. Caitlin, your turn.
Well, I don't even have to think about what game I want us to cover that we very well could, and that would be Xenogears. Because obviously, Xenogears.
That'd be really good. That'd be a good talk.
I have complicated thoughts about Xenogears.
I haven't played it in years, but I remember really liking it.
I'd like to play that game.
My favorite RPG of all time.
Okay,
Caitlin,
do you like Disc 2? Because I actually remember liking Disc.
I don't have a problem with it.
I think Disc 1 is one of the best PS1 RPGs, and Disc 2 almost ruins the entire first half.
I mean, I wish it had been properly drawn out the way disc 1 was, but I don't have as much of an issue with it as everyone else does, because
sure, I mean, I probably am a common angry opinion in that regard, but it's like you can see the exact point where the developers ran out of budget and had to start just like patching the game together with gumdrops and toothpicks.
Yes, but the alternative would have been the game doesn't come out, period. So between those two alternatives, I'm fine with it as it is.
Well, one way or another, it really speaks to that game's ambition. I think that even happened, and the fact that they chose to go for we want to finish the story, I think, is such an interesting concession.
Yeah,
like that they went to the trouble of cramming in the rest of that plot to make sure that the whole plot was covered, rather than like taking. I mean, yeah, they had to take a hatchet to the gameplay, but I don't know. And by the time I got to that point, I was honestly getting a little tired of the game. I think I was like 50 hours there. I was like, okay, so I just get the rest of the plot and the occasional boss fight. I'm actually kind of cool with that.
Well, we talk about this all the time on the show. Like in most RPGs, there comes a point like towards the late middle where it gets a little long in the tooth, and you start having not quite as much fun. And I feel like at that point in Xenogears, you get to disc 2, and it changes up its pace, and it's kind of nice.
I still don't agree, man. Like when I was in the 50-hour mark and moving into disc 2, it's like, yeah, this game rules, man. I can't wait to play more of it. And then it just is people sitting in chairs and telling you what's happening instead of actually,
how long ago did you develop that perspective?
Oh, I was in high school.
See, I think as an adult, you might appreciate this too more.
This is why we should play it again.
Yeah, exactly.
So this could be another FF10, a game that I don't maybe love, and then playing it on Return Counter has me love it again.
Nope, that's gonna be The World Ends With You.
Oh, right.
I don't think he's
on that's true.
Pretty obstinate.
Spoiler alert.
Okay, well,
I'm gonna give that game a good faith effort. But anyway, keep going, Caitlin.
So in terms of like game I'd like to see us do that won't happen. I actually had 2. If that's okay.
Yeah.
One of them would be the original Xenoblade, which is I would love for us to play it, but it's way too long to get through in a month if you want to do everything. That game takes a lot of time. Unless we all did a new game plus speedrun, and then we could probably get through the main plot. But
I quit after the first 4 hours because I thought it was boring.
Oh, man.
In those first 4 hours, did you get out of Colony 9? Because if you didn't, go back and keep playing.
Well, I'd have to find my Wii and blow the dust off of it. I think they used to be white. I'm pretty sure mine's like gray now.
You would know if you had gotten through Colony 9.
Oh, I did not. I know that for a fact.
That game starts being really good when you start moving the caves, and it becomes really awesome when you hit Gower Plains the first time.
Yes.
Gower Plains, like, wow, what a great early game opening era. Holy crap.
Yeah. No, Josh.
I could have played 10 hours in Gower Plains alone.
I don't care if your previously white Wii is now all black. Get it out and keep playing the game, because
black Wii's matter, Caitlin.
Wow.
Oh my god.
I was gonna say it was a Sega Sports Wii.
For the reference, I did not make that awful. I make really bad puns and jokes. I did not make that awful joke.
But not all puns.
Everyone, just shut the Skype call.
All right.
Josh is gonna kick Mike off the call.
If we hadn't lost all of our listeners by now, then that did it.
You guys all assume that we have listeners. That's the worst part.
We know that Davy's a listener.
We have at least
Davy's still here.
So we haven't lost all of our listeners.
People come on the threads. They talk to us, mostly about Josh, but...
All right, well, before we completely dissolve, my other game it's a little bit maybe of a controversial pick, would be Okami, which is technically not an RPG, but since we cover Zelda, and Okami is basically, Zelda, or, Zelda with wolves, and in my opinion, a better Zelda. I said it. I would love to play Okami, but I don't know. It sort of technically falls out of our purview.
I know it's me jumping out of order. I desperately want to play a Zelda game for this.
Then play Okami.
Okami is better than most Zelda games.
I understand that. I want to play a Zelda game.
Okami's not as good as going to a 7-Eleven and drinking a Slurpee, but it's really, really... It's an excellent PS2 game.
I want to play A Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, or Link Between Worlds.
Honestly, I would cut out.
I desperately want to play one of those 3 games. I agree, but I'm leaning towards Link to the Past because that was the one that started everything.
I feel like we should do Majora's Mask.
But I want to play that game because it sounds super interesting, but I want to play a Zelda game. I don't want to walk around in time and try to find masks. As cool as that sounds, like that's a divergent path on that series. I want to play like mainline of it.
It's not that divergent. It's basically Ocarina of Time 2. We made this interesting now.
We made it good?
I mean, they're both good, but
only one is.
I don't know. Majora's Mask deviates from the formula, but it does so in really interesting ways that are totally in the spirit of the franchise. If that makes any sense. Like, it's different, but familiar at the same time.
So who's next in line to talk about their favorite retro encounter game in 2015?
Davey.
Yeah. Or wait, no, we're talking about things we would like to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take a slightly different approach to this. I'm so glad Caitlin already said Xenoblade. Let me think. Okay. That'll never happen. I had this all set and then something happened in my house that stole my attention. Okay.
If it's on fire, then you should take care of that first. It's cool.
No, not yet.
All right.
Okay. I'm gonna say a game that I think we have to play, which I know isn't quite the question, but it keeps coming up, and I think literally every series of episodes I've been on, it comes up, but we have to play Chrono Trigger.
Yes. I'd be dumbfounded if we make it through the next 2 years without playing that.
I'm concerned that you said 2.
I didn't want to get nailed down to just 1. So
we just always come back to that game when we're looking for like, oh, what game did this well before? Like, or looking for even not mechanical stuff, like narrative devices and stuff. Like, we keep going back to Chrono Trigger for some reason.
It's because it's one of the best RPGs of all time.
It's my favorite,
and nobody can argue with that.
It's my favorite RPG of all time. If I probably wouldn't want to be on a Chrono Trigger episode because I would just be, saying angry things to people expressing negative opinions about the game, and that's not valuable discourse.
People have negative opinions of the game.
Yeah, well, some people don't dislike Chrono Trigger, even among the RPG fan editors. But the Chrono Trigger is amazing. And I'm sure people would like to hear Retro Encounter talk about Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, talk some sugar for sure. The other game I wanted to talk about is actually just a game that I wish we would do, and it's totally feasible that we will, which is a severely underrated game in Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Best Breath of Fire game.
Only good Breath of Fire game.
That's
wow. All right.
Yeah. No, he gets pretty heated about it. I kind of agree. I think I will say this: all the other Breath of Fire games were only good for their time. Breath of Fire 5 is good, like, now.
The mechanics of that storytelling is so good.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I remember you guys got pretty into it about Breath of Fire stuff. Was it in the Terranigma podcast?
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, normally I have an opinion about everything, but I've only played Breath of Fire 2, and I thought it was okay, not great.
Exactly.
So that's the only one.
That sums up the series, basically.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Wow.
They're really
stick to Street Fighter and Mega Man, Capcom.
They're not bad games. It's just Breath of Fire 5 is so interesting and actually really good. And I think people are actually starting to realize how good it was now that the backlash over it when it first came out is kind of dying out. People are really starting to re-examine this game. And they should.
That pseudo roguelikes are so in vogue right now.
Yeah.
How much does Breath of Fire cost on Amazon right now?
Like less than $20.
If you pay for shipping, I'll let you borrow it.
Yeah, we should do that game soon for sure. There's a lot to say there, and I think the way it would challenge the way we set up the show would make it a really interesting series too.
Or a complete disaster more than it normally is.
It's $18 new and like $4 used, so I might just get that anyway.
Yeah, do it.
You know what I'd be interested to see? I'm like, completely off topic, but so I was about to go back, partially for the show, but like to start grabbing some of those PS2 games to be able to go back and play them.
Yeah.
Right.
But now with PS4 having the backwards compatibility with PS2,
I was just gonna bring that up. Yeah.
it makes me really hesitant because I was literally like, I had Dark Cloud in my cart, and then they announced it. I was like, well, that's awesome, and I just got to delete that and download it, and it was like that was super simple solution. Like, I got it, I think actually cheaper. Like,
is that out?
What?
Yeah, it's out.
Yeah.
Oh man,
it's like $6.
You just ruined my weekend.
You mean like saved your weekend?
Definitely altered his weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I've had the same reaction to the PS2 thing. Like, I think it's awesome, but now, like, if there are any PS2 games I haven't played, I'm really hesitant to like pick them up because, like, well, now apparently Wild Arms 3 is coming to PlayStation Network soon.
Oh, neat.
What?
Yeah, that's one of the ones that got trademarked. So I'm like,
I think Wild Arms 3 has like the coolest first 5 minutes in like any RPG.
I haven't played it.
It's so great.
Yeah.
It ends up with everyone jumping into a train car, pointing firearms at each other, and then
Wild Arms at each other.
Yeah, sure.
It turns into a four-way standoff.
It's the beginning of FF13.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's like Mexican standoff. Now, how did we get here? And then you do like a brief sort of segment for each of the 4 main characters to see how exactly they got on that train. It's a very cool narrative device that got me very interested in the very first few minutes of the game.
Only the first few minutes.
Last thing about Dragon Quarters, it would just be a good follow-up now that you guys have done Parasite Eve. Because that is totally an evolution of the Parasite Eve combat system.
Huh. I guess that is. I never would have put that together, but yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well done, Davey. You should have been on the podcast.
I thought about it.
Let Davey host. We'll get t-shirts.
I have played a lot of old RPGs. Like, way too many. We haven't covered anything.
That is common among many of us. Many of us have played too many old RPGs. So, Marcos, your turn now.
Okay, keep chugging through this.
Yeah. Man, I want to be able to go to bed on time. I have work in the morning.
I'll keep it brief. The game that I'd like for us to play, it probably will never happen, is Steambot Chronicles.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
We'd have to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
You've mentioned this game on the podcast before.
Yeah, it's just a great game. And, like, the whole premise is behind it. Kid with some amnesia wakes up in the beach, and you start your game. You can play as a good guy, a bad guy, and choosing the bad guy or the villainous approach is by far the most enjoyable experience that I've had in a video game ever, especially towards the ending. And I've never like cried and laughed at the same time during a game as much as I played this game, because by far, like, I think it's just a really great game. I think all of you would really enjoy it, especially if you chose the villain route. So, we're probably never gonna play that game. But
okay, that game's $100 on Amazon. So that's a little less like
Steambot Chronicles.
It's $10. Oh yeah, it is $104. Never mind. I read that as $10.49. That's
nope. It's $104.99.
Steambot Chronicles.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So we're gonna have to wait a little bit. It's $40 used.
What?
Yeah, it looks like 40 is about the number on eBay too. Because you sold me on the game, Marcos. I'm definitely curious. You know, like the old Leo DiCaprio in Django Unchained. At first you had my curiosity, now you have my attention. But
wow.
But yeah, I don't know. I'll have to allocate my budget for this one. Not sure if it'll happen soon.
No,
but yeah,
I would wait until PS Network.
Looks like a cool game for sure.
I got confused. I'm gonna get made so much fun for this. Because I was like, oh, we're gonna have to wait for that. Because I was thinking SteamWorld Dig, and then the SteamWorld most recent game that came out. Like, oh, that just came out.
Nope, not the same game. That one definitely slipped through the cracks for me, since Atlas had a really, really good PS2 output in the early 2000s, but I don't even remember hearing about Steambot Chronicles until meeting Marcos and hearing him be so enthusiastic about it probably earlier this year.
I feel like I've had this conversation a couple times with him now that I forget that it exists, and then talking to him, I immediately want to buy it.
Right?
You just need to talk to somebody and get it cheaper for us, Marcos, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, I'll try to haggle them down, or just rob them blind.
or just send 8,000 emails to Atlas so they release it on PSN.
No, on Vita.
Bill, Vita can hook up to the PSN.
No.
Yes.
Don't work that way.
Yeah, I think eventually we'll get on there when I have grandkids or whatever.
Wow.
Great kids. Moving along. Peter, you're the last one.
Oh, it's my turn. Yay.
Yay.
I guess for games that I don't think we'll be able to cover, since Persona 4 and Xenoblade were already talked about, I don't think we could realistically do the Shadow Hearts games or Kudelka, its predecessor.
Ooh, Kudelka.
I would really...
Kudelka is so hard to find. I tried to get a copy of that game for ages.
Yeah, and I would really like to play the Shadow Hearts games. I would love to be able to do it for the show. But
yeah, me too.
Because of how expensive those games have, I don't have them, because of how expensive they've gotten, and the fact that the rights for that series are all over the place now, like, I don't think they're likely to get re-released. So it seems like we're unlikely to, like, we probably wouldn't be able to see those games for cheap. And it's a shame, because I think they're really cool, and I think it sucks that games like that, like Shadow Hearts, have gotten lost because of that.
Shadow Hearts Covenant is such a great game. That game's awesome.
Yeah, the only Shadow Hearts game I played is from the New World.
Oh, weird. That's the only one I haven't played.
I tried playing all three, but the only one that actually got my attention through the end was Covenant. That one's which is the second one, and it's really great.
It's so much more powerful with the story from the first one.
Yeah, I read some wiki articles.
Maybe we'll look. Maybe we'll
I read it
out.
on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
I
doubt
hold your breath. Yeah.
Yeah. As for games that I'd like to see on the podcast, we've already brought up Twowie. I have tried to play Twowie twice, and neither time have I been able to get past the initial combat tutorials because
right, exactly. Because that game is okay. Keep going.
No, I just get sensory overload, and I really like the style of that game. I'm a huge Kingdom Hearts fan, so the fact that Nomura does the character designs is like, I'm used to this sort of weirdness. I like the kind of urban, modern, like, style. It gives me kind of a Persona vibe. It's a game I really want to like, and I've always wanted to play it, but I just have not been able to get past that first hour. So this would be one of those situations where having an excuse to play it on the show, I think, would be beneficial to my backlog and my sanity. And the other game that I was thinking is, since we aren't going to be able to do Xenoblade most likely, the other Operation Rainfall game, Pandora's Tower, that's one that's been on my to-do list for a while. And I think we could do that one in a month easily.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the Wii U shop now.
Yeah, one funny thing about that, I saw it really cheap on Amazon during Black Friday earlier this year, so I bought a copy, and then, later in that week or something, I went down to my shelf of Wii stuff and didn't realize I already owned it.
Wow.
So
nice.
You hate it when that happens.
So I'm just such a good consumer. I'm accidentally buying things twice.
It's okay. I have 3 copies of Persona 4, so
I probably technically do now too.
Yeah, but
I have
that game does look cool, and I'd be interested in trying it. Sure.
I have 4 copies of Xenoblade, so
wow.
The first one?
Yes.
How?
You're the reason I couldn't buy one at a normal price.
I have the Japanese, European, and American versions of the Wii version, and then I have the 3DS version too. So
I'm impressed.
I had to buy it for $100 from GameStop.
Caitlin loves games that start with XENO.
Yes.
Xenosaga. Let's do that.
Oh
yeah.
Let's do all 3 of them in 1 month.
Yeah, it's really hard to find. I only own the first 2. I've only played the first one. Own the first 2. The third one's hard to find, dude.
Really?
I don't want to. It's a really good one.
Huh? The third one is a really good one.
I don't want to touch Xenosaga 1 again.
What?
I like Xenosaga 1.
It was fine.
Okay. There's a lot of things that Xenosaga 1 you could argue does well or not well or whatever. I think they wasted Yasunori Mitsuda with that game's soundtrack, and that's a crime that I simply cannot abide.
They made a decision to have a lot of dead air during the game,
and that was stupid.
I agree with you, especially since the OST is really good. Just think about it that way. The OST is still good, and if they don't use it enough.
Yeah. I think the worst thing about episode 1 is that there's no boss music that outside of the final boss.
Yeah, that's my God.
And I don't super care for the normal boss music that much, in part because you hear it all the time and you don't get a break from it. So that's the worst thing about Xenoblade from my perspective. Xenosaga from my perspective.
Last time I played that game, I posted about it on social media, and my buddy just said, "Have fun with that battle theme, bro."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the big joke about that game is that the cutscenes are so lengthy and there's so many of them. And honestly, that's a fair comparison. That's a fair criticism because there are a ton of lengthy cutscenes in that game, but it's still good. I was compelled by it. It's a good RPG.
Maybe if they re-release it, I'll give it another shot. But I remember just being very turned off by the first episode.
Well, you could just skip the first one and join us for episode 2, which is my least favorite out of the 3, but
that's what I've heard.
Same, yeah.
The bad one, quote unquote.
Yes.
The combat became very tedious.
I had a fun time with the combat system.
Huh.
Can I still fire punch dude as a blonde German-looking android?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Ziggy is always awesome. Ziggy, starts awesome in episode 1 and just keeps being awesome throughout the series. So
he was my favorite character in episode 1.
I like Ziggy a lot.
What'd you say, Davey? I
didn't hear you. I said he also played guitar.
Oh.
Different Ziggy.
You don't know.
Is it? Yeah.
Is it really?
Probably the same Ziggy.
I don't know, that puts his backstory in a whole other light now.
Think about it.
Like, he and Voyager were in a band together, obviously, and then they broke up, and that's why Voyager went crazy.
Davey, this is the crossover fanfic you were born to write.
I feel like you can't do a David Bowie themed fanfic without bringing Metal Gear Solid into it, though.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm in.
I don't get it.
Everyone in Metal Gear Solid is David Bowie.
I mean, I would believe it, but
have you not seen that picture?
No.
No.
It's like
we're not doing another conversation like this.
It's a bunch of different David Bowies and a bunch of Metal Gear Solid characters, and they're all similar.
Well, now we know why they never made a live-action Metal Gear Solid movie.
Yeah, they couldn't afford to wait. And he's getting too old.
Davey, do you spend your entire day just like Googling unusual pop culture video game mashups? Because this is at least the third or fourth time you've brought some mind-blowing comparison up, either on the podcast or when we're chatting outside the podcast.
Did you guys ever see the Ben Affleck Mass Effect crossover?
Yeah. You made me look at that once.
The horror.
I think we need to move on before my mind just implodes. Okay.
So back on topic. I'll close this kind of question out. The question. The games that I would really like to play that won't. All of them come down to time.
Right.
Persona's an easy one. I guess not time, kind of time, but also broken. I'd love to play Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic. Either of the two. Definitely the first one with like the mods that were added and whatnot that filled in some of the story gaps. But yeah, a lot of those I would like to. They're too long.
Yeah, there was I think there was like a KOTOR 2 mod that came out earlier this year.
Yeah, they keep they keep growing on that game, and I love those games back when I played them the first time. I think it'd be both topical and interesting to go back to them now that with the movies coming out.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, there were people that were wondering why we didn't do KOTOR in December because of Force Awakens.
Because the game doesn't run on anything basically, unless you have an Xbox.
Oh well. Okay, yeah. You don't have an Xbox?
I do.
It's also
have an Xbox.
It's also on iOS. And I'm guessing also Android, but I don't know for sure. So there's also that.
Games aren't real unless they're on a PC or console.
No.
Elitism. Woohoo. And then kind of rolling off of that with KOTOR, a game I would really like to play that I think actually we have a shot at doing. Beyond some of the games, like you guys all mentioned really good ones.
I mean, of course we have a shot at doing this since you're the curator of the podcast.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, right?
Right.
So, I'd love to play Mass Effect 2.
Yay!
I've played that game before. I love that game. I just think it'd be a lot of fun to go through. It's a little bit different than some of the games we've been playing as well.
Best game in the series, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the best games that has come out in a while, I think.
Yes.
I agree with both of those opinions. Mass Effect 2 is awesome.
I like this idea. We should do it.
Yeah. Well, since I'm in charge of the show, I guess I can make that happen now.
And also, I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, Josh, but Mass Effect Andromeda is supposed to come out at the end of the year in 2016. So,
and we have yet to see gameplay.
Yeah, true. But I mean, if that does happen, then yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
One of the Mass Effect key guys.
Wait, he was fired? I thought he just left.
I mean,
the writer?
I don't know.
The writer left.
Wasn't it a director?
He was a
developmental director.
Yeah, whatever.
I think it was the director, but yeah.
You're saying it would be a good time to do it?
Yeah, it would be a very timely time to do it if Andromeda does end up happening in 2016.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's I mean, I joked earlier that we're running out of RPGs. That's the great thing is you can basically reach in at any year from any different console and you can pluck 10 great games. We actually have the issue that there's too many games that we want to play.
There's always too many games.
Yeah, behind the scenes, we're feverishly arguing about this or that, and the votes come really close every month. And so that's why I joked with Davey when I think it was Davey mentioned. I was like, oh, we can do that in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when you start looking at the list, I mean, and Chrono Trigger is fantastic, but you start looking at the list of choices that we have, there really isn't a loser a bunch that amongst those. So I don't know. We'll figure something out. Topic 3, we made it. So we're gonna change gears. We've talked about Retro Encounter basically this year and next year.
Change Metal Gears. Change Xenogears.
Speaking of Metal Gear,
we're
gonna talk about your favorite game that you played this year.
If you say Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm out of here.
Metal Gear Solid 5.
Nice knowing you. Nice knowing you, Caitlin.
Got it in there. Woo!
I have
game's fantastic. Right, it's so good.
Negative opinions about that.
Let's set aside a half hour to argue about this. And...
I wanna. So I'm just gonna go first because I'm already talking, and I feel like it's been a while since I've talked.
You were just talking.
Gets lonely at the top, huh?
Yeah. We've talked about this before. It's hard being on the podcast. There's not a lot of time for everything else. So beginning of the year and kind of a little bit in the fall, I was able to fit in some spare time. My RPG game of the year would definitely be Destiny. I think the Taken King came out and made that game stupendous. I think before it was a really good shooter that was kind of crappy around the edges, but the Taken King actually made it good. And then outside of the RPG world, Metal Gear Solid 5, Hearthstone kind of took it the whole year for me. And then early in the spring, I got to try Rogue Legacy and Shovel Knight, and I love those games. I think those are actually the 5 or 6 games I actually got to play this year outside of the podcast. So everything else, you've already heard my thoughts on. And Metal Gear Solid is amazing. Fantastic. So good. So good.
The gameplay, I will agree with you, in general, is very good.
So good.
The story is...
so good.
No, it's not.
So good.
Of it is really good.
Oh boy.
So good.
The idea for the story is pretty good.
So good.
The execution, not so much.
They made a hit track instead of a hit album.
What?
You can add hit tracks to the game to play when your helicopter arrives.
Problem solved.
I did that game introduced me to the band Japan, which made me really happy.
I recommend the Welcome Back Cotter theme.
So I guess we're just going to talk about Metal Gear, which I'm okay with.
No. So please talk about something else.
The first Metal Gear Solid, I think, was a perfect game when it came out on the PlayStation 1.
Marcos, please talk about Steambot Chronicles 4.
I was just trying to think, we could probably make a Metal Gear Solid game out of the references we made, because there was Metal Gear so he can play Snake.
Well, I kind of think since there's missions involved and you technically level up both your base and some of your character ancillary abilities, that kind of counts as an RPG. So I think if we wait about a year and a half, that would be the 2-year requirement, and we can just cover it on the podcast.
That's basically Breath of Fire 2 right there.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, also Dagran can be Liquid Snake.
Well, yeah. We also had Revolver Oliver. How did I say that?
What?
Oliver Salat.
Oh.
Wow, that's a deep cut. That's a May joke showing up in December.
That's quality.
Right on.
That shows that you watched or listened to all the podcasts.
You know, that proved even more true in the second chapter, The Trails in the Sky.
Is that your personal game of the year, Davey? Trails in the Sky second chapter?
No. It was super good though.
Okay, so what is? I'm just trying to get this topic away from Metal Gear.
I wish I could say Xenoblade. I loved Xenoblade Chronicles X a lot. I didn't like it as much as the original though, and I think that kind of tainted my perception of it. I went right from that though into Etrian Odyssey Untold 2, and that game just makes me feel so good. Like, it's just like a feeling of contentment that I don't get from most games. And like, there's something about exploring that forest. You guys know I'm really into like nature and stuff.
Okay.
Stuff.
Yeah. We talked about it a bit during Terra Enigma, but no, it just feels so nice and at home. But it's hard to say. I played a lot. I went on a quest this year to figure out what my favorite game was, to kind of try to re-examine my opinions on stuff. And I didn't really come up with a straight answer. I realized that I could play any Tales of game with my wife forever, and that'll just be like video games. Like, that's a great time. I also played Undertale this year, and that blew me away as a piece of art, but not so much as a game. And but the thing that's made me feel the best has definitely been Etrian Odyssey. So I guess that's where I'm going to land on that.
I'm super intrigued by Undertale.
It's super, super worth playing. It's a really cool, almost kind of postmodern perspective on RPGs as a genre of media.
I watched Mike play it for a little bit during the stream.
You did?
Yeah.
I still can't believe people actually watched me during that Extra Life stream.
I try to support everybody on the podcast when they do streams. I watched Caitlin for a little bit for hers. I jumped around a little bit.
Aww.
Yeah, I played Undertale in late October, a few months after it came out, for Extra Life, and I kind of hate saying this because I hate it when other people say this, but after you have to get past the first couple hours.
Yeah.
Which is, I hate it when people say, "Oh, the game doesn't get good until you've done 5 hours." Like, well, then I just wasted 5 hours. And
isn't that how long the game is?
The game's like 6 or 7, and
it's only like 1 hour.
Yeah, there's some sort of like the middle third of the game drags a little bit, and the game is consistently weird and funny and unique. And I was basically intrigued, but maybe not in love the whole beginning. But then when they start dropping plot bombs on you in the last area and you do the last couple of boss fights, holy crap! That game is just subversive and cool, and a meta commentary on RPGs, and just makes you re-examine everything you've done in the game prior, and makes you immediately want to start a new game. Of it. I mean, I understand where where you might, be a little cold on the game if you've played the very beginning, but it pays off. I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Did anybody else like games this year?
Oh well, of course. So for me,
I thought you were just gonna leave it, just like, of course.
Of course.
Well, now that
drop the mic.
I guess I could just leave it at that if you really, really want me to.
Caitlin, I want to hear your opinions.
Me too.
Thank you.
Definitely, if they're positive about Metal Gear.
No, they're not positive about Metal Gear. Metal Gear Solid 5 is my biggest disappointment of the year. So, sorry.
Ouch.
And I'm a huge Metal Gear Solid fan. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to rant about it on the show. We can rant about it, argue about it after we're off the air. Anyway. From an RPG perspective, Xenoblade. with Witcher 3 is really close second, almost tied. I had a really hard time deciding, which one was 1 and which one was 2 when I was doing my write-ups for our Game of the Year feature. Because they're both really excellent in different ways. And maybe it was because Xenoblade just came out this month, and so I'm still kind of in the rush of playing it, but it's just so much fun. Just running around fighting stuff in that game is so much fun. And
oh yeah, definitely.
And it's everything that I wanted from the game. I mean, I'll agree. I think the story isn't quite as good as the original, but it's supposed to be different. It actually kind of works with the gameplay and with the story that they're trying to tell. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and the first Xenoblade had a really, really amazing story with twists and turns and great stuff in it. So the second one not being quite as good in the story department is hardly a harsh criticism.
Yeah, it's not a deal breaker. It's kind of like, it's hard for me to imagine how they could have surpassed the original Xenoblade story if they were really trying to go the same, linear story route, because it's just a really good story. And they weren't. They were trying. This is a game that the gameplay is very nonlinear and the story is nonlinear, and that kind of works, to have the gameplay and the story be sort of presented in the same fashion. It's not necessarily what you think of when you think of a Xeno game, because we think of Xeno games as being really linear, plot driven, and lots of plot in your face all the time. And that's not the case in this game. You have to kind of hunt for the plot a little bit through doing affinity missions and side quests. It's more spread out over everything you can do in the game as opposed to just doing the main story, which is different, and it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but it's still an interesting experience, and I am still having a blast with the game despite the different way they tried to present the story. So,
can I ask you a couple things? And
sure.
If we can camp out on this real quick.
Yeah.
First of all, no spoilers, but have you beaten that game yet?
Oh God, no, I haven't beaten it yet. But
I had a legitimate fangirl squeal at the ending of that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be very happy, Caitlin.
Well, I spoiled myself rotten with the Japanese version. So
oh, did you?
Okay. I know what happens at the end. Okay. In fact, I know probably exactly what you mean, like the literal moment that you probably squealed. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay. And yes, it is awesome. So
man, yeah, me and okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I agree with you that they really succeeded in telling the story in an appropriate way for the open world, the more open setting of the second game. But did you find that preferable to the way the first game divvied out territories and stuff and kind of led you through from area to area to explore?
The story or just the progression of the areas?
The exploration of the areas and the progression there.
I think in the end, just in terms of gameplay, I prefer the openness of X, just because having all of that available from there's some really awesome areas in the original Xenoblade, but you have to go through every other area first and the plot involved in those areas to get there. You can't get to Aerith Sea until you go through all the plot up through Magna Forest, because you have to be at that story point in order to even get there. Whereas with X, I swam up to Sylvalum before I was supposed to, and I even snuck into Argyros when I really shouldn't have, because the enemies are too powerful for me, just because I could and I wanted to see them. And that was kind of a really awesome experience to be able to do that right off the start. So
can I answer this one too, actually?
Yeah.
I prefer, I kind of at the opposite. I prefer Xenoblade 1's structure, but I will concede and agree that with the style of storytelling that they're using here, this structure works a lot better. Yeah. Or for what they're trying to do, and I'm loving the game. I think it's such a gorgeous world, and that mitigates a lot of the fact that I would prefer a different style of gameplay. Although I will say that some of the now that I've been playing it for a bit more and the initial luster is worn off a bit, some of the minor quest designs are starting to grate on me a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that.
particularly, I item hunting quests in general are the fact that I bought the guide for this game, and the guide is useless. It's just like, here is all the information that the game already tells you, and yes, it's compiled into one thing you can look at, but we won't tell you anything more specific than what the game already tells you. So there's this one
I don't necessarily agree with that. The walkthrough for the main story, I agree, is useless because it doesn't tell you anything, but the data sections that detail, where the different heart-to-hearts are, where the affinity missions are, what areas of each continent you can find collectibles in, is still really helpful.
I guess I would have to take a closer look at it then, because there's one of the side quests I picked up it was one of the ones where it tells you to go to talk to this person, and then they give you the objective. So I didn't know what I was in for until I'd already accepted the quest, and then I was like, son of a bitch, they got me, because it was an item gathering quest.
Yeah.
I got you.
And it was one of those it was a really rare item in Noctilum that you would have to go very, very far into the continent where there are much more powerful enemies than I was prepared to encounter. And it's one of those items that only appears at certain time under certain conditions in a certain section of the map, except the guide got that part wrong. I found out later on because I looked up game FAQs for some help, and the guide was totally off about where I was supposed to be looking. I had to actually go much further north. And the enemies there were even tougher. Like, there was a level 90 giant spider thing walking around that wanted to eat my giblets.
My giblets.
No, my giblets. But and I know I'm nitpicking. I really like the game, and the fact that the game allows for those kinds of experiences is in of itself like a good thing. Like, I enjoyed it, but I criticize with love. I feel
like you hit on something, because I noticed that about the quest design too, and it just hit me that because the areas aren't doled out one by one in a linear fashion, those quests aren't as focused as they were in the first game. Like, you got a quest in the first game, you knew you were going to be able to go do it because that's the area you were in, and the area you were in was more or less always something you could handle in some fashion. I feel like because it's so much more scattershot in the much more open world, that I'm not getting the same kind of like A to B satisfaction of getting these quests, knowing I can do them, going out and doing them, and like getting my checkboxes hit.
I agree.
But unless you're doing an affinity or main story mission, just let it sit in your quest log until you can.
Yeah. Do it. No, absolutely. Yeah, I know. It's not a big complaint, but I think that like very gentle pushing of the player in the first game was like really remarkable, and I kind of feel like they lost that.
So there are 6 games that start with XENO, and we have somehow talked about all 6 on this podcast.
Oh.
Yeah,
that is amazing.
Podcast 2015.
Did anybody else enjoy games this year?
So now we never have to talk about a Xeno game ever again.
Yeah, we don't have to do a bonus round.
No, you can't.
Can I say one more thing though?
No.
And can I go?
I'm gonna say it anyway. Okay, Trails of Cold Steel, which unfortunately came out too late for us to consider for Game of the Year, and I wish it had come out a month earlier, because it's already shaping up probably to be one of my favorite games of the year, and I can't wait for the second game to come out next year, and I can't believe I'm saying that about a Trails game, but I am. So
yeah, well, I mean, I'm unlike Caitlin. I enjoyed Trails games prior to Cold Steel, and which only came out about a week ago. Dating the recording time of this podcast, but I've just played the prologue of Trails of Cold Steel, and I'm really blown away by it. It's so pretty and such a strong first hour that I am chomping at the bit to finish it. And it's probably going to be one of the first non-Pokemon games I play in 2016.
Yeah, like my story is I got an Xbox One for Christmas. And I was all excited about that, but when I got home, I was kind of like, oh man, I really should put my Xbox, I should set that up, but I just want to play Trails of Cold Steel, damn it. That's how excited I am about this game, that I got a shiny new console that I should be excited to just get going, but I'd rather play the Vita game that I got a week ago. So
yeah, it seems super dope. But I'm gonna try and put the train back on the track and address this topic again. Yeah, so my favorite 2015 game is probably by default Undertale, because I mean the only new RPGs I played in 2015 were Undertale, which I finished and really enjoyed. Pillars of Eternity, which is a very, very good RPG that I only got about halfway through because I got sidetracked by starting up Final Fantasy X for Retro Encounter. That was in like May, June. And then Trails of Cold Steel, which I've only played about an hour in. So I guess my RPG answer is Undertale. My 2015 RPG answer is Undertale by default. But in terms of a game from, years past that I got around to in 2015, I really spoiled myself. I played a lot of really good stuff. I got back into Diablo 3 in a huge way, and the Reaper of Souls content in Diablo 3 makes it a whole nother awesome game that I will play off and on forever. And I played Fire Emblem Awakening for the first time. I played the first 2 Danganronpa games for the first time. I played Persona 4 Golden for the first time. Unsurprisingly, I also got a Vita in 2015. So yeah, I had a 2015 full of cool games, and I mean the only 2015 one that I really finished was Undertale, but yeah, I had no dearth of games to play. I had a fun gaming year. So yeah, who else hasn't addressed this specific topic yet and wants to talk about something other than Xenoblade Chronicles X?
No one.
Where's the cricket noise?
I mean, I already talked about Xenoblade enough, but other games I played this year that I liked. I'm glad we finally got to play Type 0 with Type 0 HD. The quality of that port is a little questionable, but I still really enjoyed the game. It was my first platinum trophy, so I think.
Congrats!
I'm sorry. I actually got my second platinum trophy earlier this year playing Virtue's Last Reward for the first time, and that game.
Nice.
I loved it.
Oh, that's another series/game I would like to do for the podcast. 999 and VRL.
That'd be good. They're so good.
Or VL.
They are both real good. Mm-hmm.
I'm legitimately considering, because I have the 3DS version of VLR, and I'm considering picking it up again on Vita before Zero Time Dilemma comes out.
Which is allegedly supposed to be 2016, but I don't trust that release date at all. I think that game's going to be at least 17.
Was that announced by Goofy? Because that didn't work out in 2015.
I wouldn't be super surprised. Chunsoft knows how to throw together a visual novel pretty quick.
Spike Chunsoft. I think it's so funny that like two of the best Vita murder visual novel games are Virtue's Last Reward and Danganronpa, and the two companies making those two merged in 2014.
Right,
so now they're coming out of the same studio, and they even have like a VLR segment in Danganronpa 2.
I just think it's funny that Uchikoshi keeps getting tossed around like that. He's had such a rough time.
Yeah, it's VLR 3, or the third game in that trilogy, has had such a troubled history of getting funding and figuring out who's developing it. I can't wait for it to come out. It's going to be a day one purchase for me. That'd be cool to play in Metro Encounter.
He's always been going through that. Like, a couple of his games got canceled before he got to finish out the storyline because his company got bought out or changed or stuff.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. Visual novels without arrow content.
Sounds like a certain series I love.
I know, right?
What about you, Marcos? You've been quiet for a while.
Oh, what? For this year.
Did you wake him up from a nap?
Possibly. No, Xenoblade Chronicle X is really the only game I played this year that I really enjoyed. I mean, the only other game I played, or had time to play, was Splatoon. But that's irrelevant. But
Splatoon was good.
Now, if I was allowed to talk about Metal Gear, you can talk about Splatoon.
All right, Splatoon, one of the greatest games ever. I don't play anymore because I guess I'm just too aggressive online. And I'm always playing against Japanese children because I play around like 2 a.m. in the morning. So, and it's always Japanese names that pop up. I assume those are Japanese children.
This is like me whenever I play Mario Kart online.
Why do you assume that they're children?
I just figure it's around that time. I just think of like what time it comes out. Like when how long are their classes?
Well,
okay, if Persona 3 has taught me anything,
so it's only.
Well, yeah, that's right. That is right.
Their classes only last about 3 minutes. They get asked one question and they get to leave.
Unless someone, sometimes it's more like 5 minutes if someone walks up to you during lunch and say they want to hang out.
Yeah, I play video game children is who I play against. No.
Also, it takes you an entire day to answer one exam question in Japanese exams. Isn't that funny?
And then on the last day, you don't even have to answer questions. You just
your pen just moves as if it has a will of its own.
Your intelligence is based off of how many books you read that didn't involve school.
And eating fish makes you smarter, but eating hamburgers makes you more courageous.
Oh, gotta do that bowl challenge.
That's
Japan,
every time it's raining.
Japan is such a magical place.
I was bummed. I had one day to go in Persona 4 Golden before I would have finished the bowl challenge, and I didn't make it in time. And I was very sad. I was like, this 80-hour save file is ruined.
New Game Plus.
Yeah, right.
Just for that bowl. Go back and catch that big fish.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
That's really
Marcos, I literally bought you a copy of Persona 4 earlier this year.
It's sitting there on my.
So you have
really
no excuses. I gave it to Marcos as a gift earlier this year, and he has not played it.
I played.
Okay, sir, get off the podcast. Just go.
Well, we've already excluded that from the podcast list, so I think I'm safe.
No, that's not true. It just can't be a normal podcast.
We're doing a bonus episode about it.
How about we
in
do
March.
a podcast? We can do a podcast where we lock Marcos in a room, and once he finishes Persona 4, we'll give him some food and drink.
Why wouldn't we just?
Wasn't that the development process?
Jeez, Mike, we don't want to kill him.
Did you make a Konami joke?
Oh wow! Okay,
Did I make a Konami joke?
Yeah.
No, there was this article someone wrote a while ago where did I mention this on the podcast before? I could have sworn I did. Where someone wrote an article about they were saying that the development process of Final Fantasy VIII involved Tetsuya Nomura and Kitase locked in a room where there was a gas leak, and Sakaguchi wouldn't let them out until they came out of the game. So and it's like day 3, Nomura has eaten all the sandwiches and is crying in a corner.
Wow. That would explain a lot. So the Squall is dead theory was true.
I can't imagine a better place to stop the podcast than right there.
Don't we have more topics to go over? This Google Doc has like 8 things in it.
Oh, I grayed everything out now. We've been going for a while.
Yeah, we have, haven't we?
Try to wrap it up and.
Yeah. Look at
kids.
Hour and 40 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, unless you guys have anything you really want to touch on with other games.
We should play Front Mission Gun Hazard. I forgot to say that earlier.
Like games from this year that you liked.
Oh, no.
Majora's Mask 3D was pretty good.
And the other game I liked was Tales of Zestiria, however you pronounce that game. I like playing that with my wife.
Tales of Zestfully Clean.
Zestios.
Tales of Zesty Sauce.
That game just had a fixed camera. I would have not hesitated to
that camera's terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I'm like zoomed up on whatever that kid's name's butt the whole time I'm trying to fight. And like my wife's like somewhere in the corner in the screen. She doesn't know what she's doing.
I still haven't played any Tales.
Speaking of zoomed in butts,
yeah, please.
That intro sequence to Metal Gear Solid 5.
Oh yeah.
Josh, come on. It's photosynthesis, okay? It's photosynthesis.
That's gonna be how my fantasy starts. To zoom in on David Bowie's butt.
Hey, every Metal Gear game, they are very, very meticulous about sculpting out those buttocks.
Wait, whose butt are we talking about? If we're talking about Big Boss's butt, then
everybody's.
Well,
honestly,
no, we're talking about Kiefer Sutherland's.
Can we do a bonus round in 2015 about the best video game butts?
Bonus butts.
All right.
We should invite Derek for that one.
Oh man.
Probably, yeah. But no,
me and Derek could talk about butts for hours.
That make Snake's butt pop out. You know what I'm talking about?
That's going to do it for us here at Retro Encounter. We really appreciate you listening to this train wreck of episode 25. We really hope you listen to the next 25 as well after possible severe disappointment with this one. We had fun doing this, and we hope you had fun. As always, we love hearing from you. We weren't making it up when we were saying like how nice it is to hear people like their reaction and what they think of the podcast. So please get on the boards, voice your thoughts, jump on email, send us emails to retro@rpgfan.com. Send in your reviews, comments on whatever you use to listen to podcasts. iTunes makes a huge difference every time we get a 5-star review. But yeah, that's going to do it for us at Retro Encounter. That wraps up 2015. Thanks for listening thus far.
Happy New Year.
Here's to many more.
Yeah. Get drunk and level up.
Please drive safely.
Something like that.
Especially if there's snow in your area.
At least part of that.
Yeah.
Now, which part is up to you. So.